Good morning. Sorry for being late. So, in the last class, we discussed some general aspects how dark ages, golden ages are perceived. And then we started with, since our first topic was the Gupta time, we started with political chronology, because Gupta onwards political history is somewhat, what we can say, neglected even in history writing, or even otherwise not very important, because we have a general theme that is called Indian feudalism, which is going to be important in the medieval time. So cultural aspects, since we have to cover separately, we are here primarily focusing upon the political dimensions, and in that context we made a timeline for Indian history, beginning with the Vedic time, that is Jana to Janpat to Mahajanpat to Mauryas, and after Mauryas, political tendencies in different parts of the country, arrival of the foreign ruling dynasties, and then some post-Mauryan dynasties and primary state formation in the South Indian areas. Then we proceeded further to take note of different phases of Indian history. Since we have to cover medieval in continuity, we are proceeding with this scheme, and the last time bracket was 200 to 1500. That is what is happening in which part of the country and how those things are placed in the general scheme of history. This is something that is the essence of general studies. Now we have to talk about the next time period, and you suggest me. We have talked about 1200 AD to 1500 AD. This phase is characterized by Turkish invasion, consolidation of invasion into or as a state system, and then disintegration of the same. Here we have regional powers, extension of the Sultanate, disintegration of the Sultanate, replaced by a new Sultanate, that is Bahmani, not Brahmani, Bahmani, Bahmani Sultanate, and then further disintegration in the form of the so-called Dakkani Sultanates, Bijapur, Golconda, and further south we have the mighty Vijayanagar Empire. When we have this time period of flourishing state, that was noticed also by Babur. Is this position clear? Good morning everyone online, and someone is asking, where is sir? Sir is on the dais now. So I regret for being late again to you people. Now let us proceed with the next phase, and the next phase you write 1500 to 1800. And let us see what happened during that period before we start talking about something else. (1500 to 1800). Now what is the situation at 1500, that point of time? We know. Now imagine the situation when we have 1800. By that time we have Lord Wellesley in India, East India Company, trying to establish its hegemony on the Indian powers through multiple devices, which also included subsidiary alliance system. Tipu Sultan had been defeated and killed. East India Company had established itself in the North India as a political power after the battles like Plassey and Buxar, and all this happened in the overall context of the 18th century, in which we have diverse political tendencies, including the decline of the Mughal Empire. But we have to begin with the foundation of the Mughal Empire, and the foundation was facilitated by, what have I done? Some magical. This is history class, not mathematics. Okay, we can continue with this. So we have a context of political fragmentation, disintegration once again, in which we have the position of Delhi Sultanate very vulnerable internally as well as externally. And we have some rivals of Ibrahim Lodi, the last Sultan of Delhi, inviting Babur, which included his close relatives like his uncle Alam Khan, his cousins, and also we have a very famous Rajput ruler of the time whose name is Rana Sanga. So make the same scheme. Let us continue. Right, 1500 to 1800. to 1800 AD, and in the North India we have now Mughal invasion. Now in the Deccan we have continuation of the Deccani Sultanates. Deccani Sultanates, Bijapur, Golconda, Ahmednagar, Berar. Three of them are particularly important: Ahmednagar, Bijapur and Berar. Finally, all of them came to be annexed by the Mughals. Ahmednagar by Shah Jahan, and the remaining two major powers, Bijapur and Golconda, by Aurangzeb. Something that is also accepted as one of the reasons behind the decline of the Mughal Empire. Now here we have Vijayanagar. This is the situation when we enter this time period, that is 16th century. Beyond 1500 it is a 16th century. Getting this idea? Beyond 1600 it is a 17th century. So first quarter of the 1526, that was the date of the invasion of Babur, first battle of Panipat, Mughal invasion, that is part of the same time period. After this, we know about Humayun. Yesterday I think we made a passing reference to Humayun, and we talked about Humayun effect. And what is Humayun effect, by the way? Being, yes, father of a great or accomplished son and son of a great or accomplished father, with your own achievements slightly on the not on comparable basis, we can say. So the same happened. The successes of Babur in India could not be consolidated till Akbar, and we have meanwhile an interregnum, a discontinuity, and that is represented by Sher Shah Suri. Do you know Sur Empire? A very short-lived empire, but very famous in history. The Sur dynasty founded by Sher Shah Suri. He was also an Afghan Pathan, and these Afghans or Pathans were never reconciled to the Mughals till the end. And that was the beginning of the resistance, and we have here Sher Shah Suri founding a new dynasty. Humayun took shelter in Persia. Later on he came back to claim his position, and that is something that is very special about him. And then we have consolidation of Mughal Empire by Akbar, the son and successor of Humayun, and that was the later half of the 16th century, we can say. And in the later half of the 16th century, when we have the consolidation of the Mughal Empire, this empire is now going to continue for a long period of time, providing a stability in the north. The way Delhi Sultanate had behaved, that after consolidating its position in the north, started expanding towards the south. In the same way, when the Mughal position was consolidated under Akbar in the north, we have a desire to expand towards the south. Now, who were going to face the Mughal intrusion in the south? Dakkani Sultanates, Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Golconda. And it all started with Akbar, and that's why Akbar is known as pioneer of the Mughal Dakkan policy. He wrote letters and he invited them to join a grand project which Akbar thought, or rather his advisor, friend, historian Abul Fazl thought, is the noble enterprise. And what was that noble enterprise? To establish universal peace. In Mughal terminology, that has been called Sulh-e-Kul, you may have heard of. Now, how peace is to be established? Don't you think most of the battles in the world have been fought in the name of establishing peace? So, First World War was for peace. Second World War was also for peace, and nuclear bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities not to kill people but to save people. History is full of irony. The President of America was Truman, and Truman at that time made an statement that by these two bombs 5 million lives have been saved. Then some of his chamcha, I hope you understand this is a very typical term in North India, associate rather, more formal word, added ki no sir, it was not 5 million, it was around 10 million. So 10 million lives saved by dropping bombs on the Japanese cities. So wars mostly in the name of peace. Akbar also had a peace project. And the moment you have a peace project in your hand, you are going to be the most aggressive person in the world. Getting this idea? Because establishing peace is something that is very difficult enterprise. And people say that offense is the best defense. Sorry, defense is the worst offense. In the name of defending ourselves, we can be what? The most offensive creatures of the world. Isn't it? And this is true about individuals, this is true also about cultures, civilizations and nations. That is when self-defense becomes a priority, there are ideological considerations, moral considerations being compromised. Because now you are in urgency. So the same happened in Germany. Hitler was defending Germany, isn't it? Hitler was defending Germany. He was not attacking Europe. He was not eliminating Jews. He was simply defending Germany. So this is the irony of history. So Akbar also had a project now in his hand, and that is what? To establish world peace, Sulh-e-Kul. And how to establish Sulh-e-Kul? Invite them to accept your suzerainty or sovereignty. Dakkani Sultanate simply refused. Sir, we are not interested at all. You have your project of Sulh-e-Kul and try to establish it. We are not going to accept your suzerainty. And there is one more ideology that only Akbar can do it, because Akbar is Imam-e-Adil. That is a just ruler, and Insan-e-Kamil, a perfect man. So someone who is a perfect man, and only a perfect man can become a just ruler, that is Imam-e-Adil. Only he can establish Sulh-e-Kul. So it was for the Dakkani Sultanates to accept the suzerainty of the Mughals and not for the Mughals to accept their suzerainty, because they were placed on a high moral or ideological pedestal. Getting this idea? So imperialism always has its own ideology. When the British rulers came to India, they ruled India not for exploitation. They ruled India for the benefit of Indians. They had some civilizational mission, some grand mission, that is British nationalism at its best to be displayed, British morality at its best to be displayed in India. Now Akbar started this policy. Jahangir miserably failed. Shah Jahan was partially successful, and Aurangzeb made blunder of incorporating or annexing all these kingdoms, and it was again a case of expansion without consolidation, and that will lead to the decline. But meanwhile something more is to happen. Let us take note of that. What happened? These Dakkani Sultanates Here we have a very powerful ruler, Krishnadeva Raya. We all know him. And when Krishnadeva Raya died, as it happens after the death of any great ruler, in Vijayanagar we have a situation of chaos and anarchy. Do you know what is chaos and anarchy? That is lawlessness, disregard for authority. No one is there to enforce the discipline. One of his military commander, who was also his son-in-law, whose name was, anyone tell me his name? Krishnadeva Raya, Ram Raya. He became the de facto ruler. But he was ambitious, but not as capable as Krishnadeva Raya, and he embarked upon a policy of divide and rule, both internally and externally, which ultimately united the Dakhini Sultanates against Vijayanagar, and there took place a battle in the year that was 1565. This was the time when Akbar was consolidating his position in the north. He was growing up. This battle in history is very famous, in which we have defeat of Vijayanagar, 1565, by the Dakhini Sultanates. And the battle is known as, we are going to write the name of this battle, for the time being just listen to it. That is Battle of Talikota. Some of you may be knowing. Battle of Talikota, Battle of Raksha Tagadi, or Battle of Banni Hatti. So we have many names for this, at least 3 names for this battle. Now the Vijayanagar is losing its imperial position, and we have interference of Dakhini Sultanates. So DS now here in the southern territories. Vijayanagar continued with reduced imperial position, influence, territory, and with change of a capital. Meanwhile, here we also find, if you remember, Portuguese. Portuguese had come by this time. So Krishnadeva Raya had maintained a very friendly relation with the Portuguese due to political considerations. But generally, Portuguese are not included as part of medieval. They are included as part of modern Indian syllabus, as part of Europeans in India. So we are not going to talk about the Portuguese here, but we should know under what circumstances, at which place we have them. They had come even before the Mughals. Mughals came in 1526. The arrival of Vasco da Gama was in which year? 1498. And see, they were the first to come and last to leave. Isn't it? When did they leave India? 65. 61. Later than the French or earlier than the French? Earlier than the French. Who were the last to leave India? Which operation was there when Goa was annexed? Polo. Polo was perhaps in Hyderabad. Hyderabad was Vijay. Okay, Goa was Polo. So Portuguese, the first to come and last to leave. They had come by sea route and they left by the sea route. Mughals came by the land route and those routes were blocked. So they did not leave. They stayed back here and they became internalized. Getting this idea? But the Europeans maintained their separate identity. They never lost connection with their motherlands. And that's why at times we distinguish what is known as dynastic colonialism from, or dynastic imperialism from colonial imperialism. The Mughal dynasty represented what is known as dynastic imperialism. Portuguese, the British, the Dutch, all these European powers in the East represented what is known as colonial imperialism. Getting this idea? That is the difference between the two. So we have Dakhini Sultanates, we have Vijayanagar, we have Dakhini Sultanate had yet not fully celebrated their success against Vijayanagar. They found Mughal pressure on them. And now we have Mughals making their presence in the Deccan. Now Deccan political situation is going to be a bit more complicated. Now we have Mughals, now Deccani Sultanates. Meanwhile, we also have emergence of Marathas. Emergence of Marathas, something that is going to be very important in history of the medieval time. We are going to talk about Shivaji, his descendants, possibly even about the Peshwas, though Peshwas are generally covered as part of modern India. So that was facilitated by many factors. One such factor was the strong tradition of resistance against the Mughals that was established by the Deccani Sultanates. And some of you may be knowing about a person whose name was Malik Ambar. Have you ever heard of this name? He was Wazir of Ahmednagar, and he started mobilizing local resources against the Mughals. And he opened the doors of what we can say polity and nobility of Ahmednagar for the Marathas, that is local elements. So Mughal, Deccani Sultanate and the Marathas. Now here also we have Mughal plus DS plus Vijayanagar. Let us forget the Portuguese. We have just noted their presence. Mughal Empire with all its stability continuing in the north, but the Deccan political situation and southern political situations are fluctuating. Here we have Mughal, Deccani Sultanate and the Marathas. Finally it is going to be what? Mughals, when the Deccani Sultanates came to be annexed, Mughal versus the Marathas. Now Marathas going to be dominant force in the south. Then we have decline of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century. The place of Mughal adopted by Nizam, succession state of Hyderabad, Nizam and Marathas. Meanwhile, we have entry of a new player, Nizam plus Maratha plus East India Company. Nizam, Maratha, East India Company. Let us complete this till 1800, and then finally we have what? East India Company. Though it took few more years, but finally we have East India Company. Here also the sequence is something like this. We have Mughals plus, now Vijayanagar gone, Deccani Sultanates plus Marathas, then Mughals plus Marathas, Marathas more dominant here, and then Mughals plus Marathas plus a new power in the second half of the 19th century, though it was an old state but now ruled by new rulers, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, becoming very important. So Mysore. So we have now Mysore plus East India Company. Now Mughals are gone, and Mughals, their place taken by the Nizam or some local Nawabs or local rulers like the Nawab of Arcot. You must be knowing about his involvement in the Karnataka wars. Finally here also, by the time we reach this point of time, 1800, we have East India Company. Here we have, before we have East India Company, we have Mughals plus regional kingdoms. You may have heard of Awadh, you may have heard of Bengal and some others, but the same situation we have noticed in case of Delhi Sultanate also, that now Mughals, and their name continued till 1857 we can say, when the rebels declared Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last of the Mughal emperor, as the emperor of India, and their legitimacy was used by the Marathas and also by the British. We are going to talk about all these episodes, but is this sketch clear? And then what happened? Here also, even before Deccan and the south, we have domination of the East India Company that was almost complete in the second half of the 19th century due to success of the East India Company in the battles like You tell me. Palasi and Buxar. Year of Palasi 1757. Year of Buxar 1764. But we also have two more battles. Panipat, of course, not directly associated with the British, but Panipat facilitated the rise of the British, because Marathas now got involved in their own affairs and East India Company acquired opportunities to consolidate its position in Bengal and other parts of the country. But we have a battle that is called as Battle of Bedara, B-E-D-A-R-A, that was against the Dutch. One more battle, Battle of Wandiwash, that was against the French. So these four battles in the middle of the 18th century established East India Company as a political and military power in India. And these battles were against not only Indian powers but also against European rivals, the most prominent being the French, who were defeated in the Battle of Wandiwash. Is this position clear? So here also now we have Mughal plus East India Company. To some extent we have the Marathas also making some interference in the north. Rather, Mughal throne at this time was being protected by the Marathas. See, history is full of irony. Maratha power destroyed the Mughals in the Deccan, in the south, and came to protect the same Mughal authority in the north at a time when the Mughals were in their declining position. And one reason behind the third battle of Panipat, in which Marathas were defeated, was their increasing involvement in the Mughal politics in the North India. Is this position clear? Finally, by the time we reach this point of time or this year, we have East India Company almost everywhere. Though not yet in Deccan, Tipu Sultan had been defeated and killed. Nizam had accepted the subsidiary alliance treaty. Marathas, though not defeated, but first Anglo-Maratha War 1775 to 1782. The second was about to take place, which started in 1803. So we can include that also. Just a few years later than this, we have domination of the EIC also in the Deccan. North already dominated. After this, can you tell me something about Indian history? At times CPSC is asking very general kind of questions, which is not about the details, but about the general understanding. From 1800, you tell me, which year? 1800 to 1947, isn't it? 1947, or we can say from the middle of the 18th century to the middle of the 20th century, if we want to avoid exact years. That is supposed to be more mature style of writing while writing things. So even if you know the date of the Battle of Palasi, that was 1757, it is better to write that the Battle of Palasi in the middle of the 18th century. That is supposed to be more healthy way of writing in a history. Unnecessary, don't load your answer with unnecessary facts and details. The Battle of Palasi, which took place on 23rd June 1757. Examiner is not expecting this additional information, so don't try to educate your examiner. Getting this idea? And I never try to be knowledgeable while writing the answers. Don't be knowledgeable, don't be preaching. Leave those things to us, we the people in the class. We teach and we preach. You are there in the examination hall, neither for teaching, not for preaching. You are there just for telling that you know the things which has been asked. So be modest in your expression. At times we take unnecessary enterprises also. We start explaining things that this way. Sir, that is not needed at all. Something that leads to deviation in answer writing. So answer writing is a practice which is like Gandhian mass movement. Gandhi wanted mass movement, but he wanted mass movements to be restrained. So answer writing is a disciplined and restrained process. This is not what we can say a random display of your knowledge and wisdom in the examination hall that you know that much. Examiner is not going to give you marks just for your knowledge. Answer writing is craft. Getting this idea? So that must be displayed. So with this, let us now proceed with the concrete topics. Is this position clear? Now the timeline is there with us, and see the timeline and let me know which topic should be the first topic for us. Mauryas already done in the ancient classes. Post-Mauryan dynasties, Shungas, Kanwas also covered. Foreign ruling dynasties like, you tell me, Indo-Greeks, Parthians, Sakas, Kushanas already covered. Sangam age dynasties already covered. So now in that you tell me which dynasty is going to be the first topic for us. A Gupta dynasty. And as I told you, Guptas are known for temple architecture, Guptas are known for religious developments, Guptas are known for painting, music, dance, drama, Kama Sutra. There are so many things, law books, but all these things are covered as part of culture, Indian culture from ancient to modern. So here in the history part, we are left with just political and administrative aspects of the Guptas. Yes, online also suggesting me the Gupta. And here we have just some this kind of details, capitals, founders, rulers, some important inscriptions associated with them, some important personal achievements on their part. So just this kind of factual details just for the sake of PT. I think I shared some class notes with you yesterday. Have you received those class notes? That was to do away with the dictation part. Dictation part when analytical, no, it is something very interesting, but dictation when becomes factual, it is a little irritating. So I decided to give those details in form of the written notes. Have you read the class notes? How many of you? We are going to discuss those things in the class, don't worry. But dictation part I have already given you. And this is not something that I have downloaded from somewhere and given to you. No. These are my classroom dictations. If I dictate the things in the class, I would be dictating in the same manner or similar manner. Getting this idea? So the story of Guptas start with what? Shri Gupta. I have mentioned about Shri Gupta, who can be accepted as the founder of the Gupta dynasty. Sometime we can say in the beginning of the 4th century AD. Guptas had been associated with the Kushanas. Guptas were feudatories of the Kushanas, and they continued with the tradition of Kushana horsemanship. And quite often Gupta rulers have been depicted on their coins on the horseback, including Samudra Gupta. So horses and what we can say cavalry played very important role in the rise of the Guptas. Initially in the eastern part of the country. Which part precisely we don't know, but possibly what we can say eastern UP and Bihar. Some people suggest that Patliputra was their capital. Some people say that no, it was Prayagraj, modern Prayagraj, or near Prayagraj. We precisely and exactly don't know about the capital of the Guptas in the North India. Later on in the Deccan area or in the North India itself, Malwa region, they came to have a capital that is accepted as their second capital, and that was the city of Ujjain. Kalidas, a famous poet of the Gupta time, also belonged to the same place, that is Ujjain. All these things are written in your class notes. I am just discussing in the class to maintain the order and continuity, and particularly due to those people who have not read the class notes shared with them. But historicity of Shri Gupta again not very clear. And so the real founder of the Gupta Empire was a person whose name is Chandragupta. And don't confuse this Chandragupta with the Chandragupta Maurya. Names can be similar. Time, place, context may be different. Getting this idea? But in history, whenever we see some similarity in names, we tend to be more confused than in other disciplines. But just have patience. Chandragupta Maurya is different from this Chandragupta. And both are separated by almost 7 centuries, isn't it? We have Chandragupta, first of the Gupta dynasty, in the beginning of the 4th century AD. And we have Chandragupta Maurya again in the North India as the founder of the Mauryan dynasty. When? That is towards the end of the 4th century BC. That is 321 or 3rd century BC we can say. So 300 and 300, around 600 years, both Chandragupta are separated. Is this position clear? And this is about being real founder now. Founder of the dynasty and real founder of the dynasty. So if they ask you founder, Shri Gupta. If they ask you real founder, then a Chandragupta. Clear? Then Chandragupta has some achievements on his part. One such achievement was his marriage. Do you think marriage can be an achievement? How many of you? Online answers are also expected. How many of you think that marriage can be an achievement? 1, 2, 3, 4. Beware of these ambitious people. Marriage may be a political device also. What do you think? Is it possible in modern democracy? How? Qualifying the civil service and getting married to the daughter of Home Minister or the son of Finance Minister. Something like this. And then contesting the election and becoming the cabinet minister directly. Yes, marriages, of course, popularly, for masses, marriages are burden. Marriages are burden. But for the elite, marriages may be devices for political rise. And the same device was used by this man also. Even Chandragupta Maurya had relied upon the device of matrimonial alliances. And he got married to a lady belonging to a very reputed political family. You may have heard of Lichvis of Vaishali. Name of that lady was Kumara Devi. And the marriage was celebrated and coins were issued. And on those coins, we find both Chandragupta, first of the Gupta dynasty, and Kumara Devi garlanding each other. And such coins are known as Kumara Devi type of coins. So, Kumara Devi type of coins belong to which of the following ruler? Chandragupta, or first, founder of the Gupta dynasty. The second achievement on his part was the beginning of a new calendar. Do you know what is new calendar? Most of the time, when the rulers occupied thrones, they thought that that day was the most important day in culture and civilization. So they used to issue new calendars. Something that was done by this man also. And the Gupta era. Gupta era starts from which year? 319-20. And knowledge about this era available to us thanks to Al-Biruni. Do you know Al-Biruni? Medieval traveler known for his Kitabul Hind. So on the basis of Kitabul Hind and on the basis of the references made by Al-Biruni, that we come to know about the Gupta era. So these two achievements, remember, nothing more than this. Of course, he was founder and he issued a calendar or a new era, and he also issued new kind of coins which are known as Kumara Devi kind of coins. And in his rise, his matrimonial alliance with the Lichvis of Vaishali. You may have heard of in ancient India about the Lichvis of Vaishali. His son became more successful, and name of the son was Samudragupta. Now, in between Chandragupta first and Samudragupta. We have some historians who believe that there was one more ruler. But historicity again is doubtful. Someone in the online saying that whole Rajniti moved is based on this political alliance through marriage. Is it true? Whole politics is based on matrimonial alliances today? No. Partially true, we can say. Yes, marriage alliances do play a role, and particularly those people who see marriage do play a role, but connecting administrator with politicians. Politicians and politicians are also connected through matrimonial ties, but quite often and more frequently we have administrators and their politicization. Most of the time, IAS, IPS, IRS, at least these three top, they get married to which kind of families? Businessmen or politicians? Most of the time, politicians. Getting this idea? So now Samudragupta is particularly known for his interest in music. His interest in music is evident from some depictions on his coins. On some of them, he is depicted as playing traditional musical instrument, and that is veena. Veena, English translation of veena is, can you tell me? Flute, Flute, or something else? No, it is different. Flute is something different. Okay, flute is bansuri, yes. Lord Krishna. Okay, veena, I hope understand. That is strange instrument, and that is supposed to be traditional instrument. So he plays veena, his interest in music, and then what else about him? He is presented as an archer, as a horseman, as an archer in different ways. But all these depictions are of course important, but more important is an inscription. And that inscription is found on a pillar at Prayagraj. And see the interesting story of this pillar. This is Ashokan pillar basically. Ashokan pillars are something like this, a little. See, I am a great artist, you can see. This is Ashokan pillar. I must say sorry to Ashoka and his craftsman for this kind of depiction of Ashokan pillars, but something which is missing here can be fulfilled by your mental reconstruction. I can trust you for this. So we have this Ashokan pillar, and here we have the message of peace by this peaceful emperor whose name is Ashoka. On the same pillar, later on, we have Samudragupta, and his court poet, you must be knowing about Harisen. Here we have Ghapad. Ghapad talked about Ashoka and his temperament, his intentions, and his policy of benevolency. Now, Harisen celebrated the military successes of Samudragupta. And if you rely upon, that is called Prayag Prashasti of Harisen. I have mentioned all these factual details in your class notes. Those people who have gone through this, so no need to write, just listen to it, just for the sake of familiarity. Getting this idea? So Harisena, and see the irony, the message of peace on the same pillar. Samudragupta was perhaps not interested in having his own separate pillar. On the same pillar we have now something related to his military conquests. And according to Harisena, he defeated almost everyone. And this inscription is known as Prayag Prasasti. So who is associated with Prayag Prasasti? Harisen. Who composed Prayag Prasasti? Harisen. Who was Harisen? Court poet and minister of Samudragupta. In Prayag Prasasti, whose achievements have been celebrated? Achievements of Samudragupta, who was the second most important ruler of the Gupta dynasty, and he was the real maker, we can say, of the Gupta Empire. So if there was any empire called Gupta Empire, that was by this man Samudragupta, whose expeditions reached even the South India. Later on, we have Chola Emperor Rajendra I invading the North India, following the same path. And that's why some South Indian historians, particularly in history, we have some regional sentiments at times being displayed. So they write that it was a historical revenge. That is, North India had invaded South India when Samudragupta invaded South Indian areas, and now Rajendra Chol, a Chola ruler. So this is not about North India and South India. This is about shifting political balance. That is, shifting political power from north to the south in the early medieval time, in which we have South Indian dynasties militarily, politically more important than the North Indian dynasties. Is this position clear? Now later on, one more ruler whose name was Jahangir, son of Akbar. He could not create institutions. He could not expand the Mughal frontiers, but he had some noble intentions, and noble intentions related to what today we can say good governance. So Jahangir was interested in good governance and Daru, these two things. Do you think after Daru we are good governors? No. We can govern in a good manner after Daru. You are free from anxiety, you are free from so many considerations. Generally people, after consuming this substance, they behave like rulers. So even commoners start behaving like rulers. So think of the rulers. Think of the rulers with the help of this substance, how efficient they can be. Jahangir was one such ruler. We have some funny depiction of some historical characters, so don't take it very seriously, but there is no doubt that Akbar had few sons and most of them died due to consumption. Great fathers most of the time had what? Worst creatures as their sons, because perhaps they don't find time. The people who live public life, they don't pay attention to their private life. It happens. Okay. So in my area, in my village, it is said कि master का बेटा कभी नहीं पढ़ता. Teacher sons are very poorly educated because teachers are busy in teaching within inverted comma, not in the usual sense of the term, the sons or the wards of others, and they usually neglect the interest of their own children. It happens. So whatever be the case, Jahangir expressed his noble intentions through some of his edicts. And one such edict is inscribed on the same pillar. So now how many rulers are associated with Allahabad pillar? That is also called Allahabad pillar inscription. But now the name is changed. Whenever you come across any such situation, you do one thing, write the old name and put the new name in the bracket. This is the formal way of writing things. Because names are changed and it is not what we call post facto. You must be knowing some terms like this. So Treaty of Allahabad 1765, signed with the Mughal Emperor and signed with the Awadh. Now the names of those treaties are not going to be changed. They are going to remain what we can say treaties of Allahabad. It is not that now we are going to rename them as treaties of Prayagraj. Getting that? Yeah. Then one needs to change the whole historical literature. That is practically not possible. So what you can do is that you write treaties of Allahabad, or if you want to be safe and if you want to display your knowledge that you know about this recent change, though that is not academically needed, but still in bracket you can write Prayagraj, or now known as Prayagraj. But don't try to change the old names. Let the government do it. That is not your work in the examination hall. You can place the new names in the bracket without leaving the old names, just for the ease of what we can say a reference. Getting this idea? You must be knowing about a treaty of Alinagar. Do you know Alinagar? That was Calcutta, renamed by Sirajuddaulah as Alinagar, and so that treaty is still known as Treaty of Alinagar and not as the Treaty of Calcutta. Getting this idea? So there are some conventions. They are right or wrong, no comment on them. But there are some conventions and we should adhere to those conventions. Is this position clear? So three rulers are associated: Ashok, Samudragupta and Jahangir. Jahangir with his edicts on the same Allahabad pillar. Hari Sen with celebration of military accomplishments of Samudragupta. Here we have peace messages of Ashoka and 12 edicts. These edicts are known as 12 edicts of Jahangir. They are also found on the same pillar. Is this position clear? Now Samudragupta was succeeded by his son. Can you tell me the name of that son? Chandragupta, but known as now Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II again was a highly accomplished Gupta, a ruler, militarily, politically and also culturally. Let us begin with cultural because that aspect is more important. So have you ever heard of the expression Navaratnas? And don't ask me that from which year to which year. Even if you find them in books, please ignore the years, remember the sequence and remember broadly the time. All these things are happening in the 4th century. Gupta Empire founded in the 1303, 1920. So we understand that these are the developments taking place in which century? 4th century. So specific years are, I think, not important. No, dynasties and their centuries, no, they will serve the purpose. So change the popular way of looking at history, because popularly dates and details. History is summarized in form of what? Dates and details. So if you remember some dates, you are a historian. That is not the case. Understand the process. Understand the process. Events are part of larger processes of historical changes, and some events which are major landmarks in the process, their years are automatically remembered without you making any conscious effort. So are you going to forget 1757? Are you going to forget 1764? 1947? No. Why? Because you understand what happened. Getting this idea? Likewise 1191, 1192. I think most of us know. 1526, 1556, 1761, most of us know. So most of the time we are bothered about the dates which are already known to us, if they are major ones. And if you are interested in minor dates, that suppose if you are interested in knowing the reign of Razia Sultan from which year to which year specifically, so you are more interested in Razia, less interested in history. Getting this idea? So if you are doing research on Razia, then it's okay. Otherwise, place Razia Sultan where? In the overall sequence of the rulers. It can be Alauddin Khilji also, so don't take it otherwise. Getting this idea? So remember the sequence of the dynasties and try to skip what we can say the precise details. Go through the question papers. UPSC never asks this kind of questions, and just pay attention how questions are being asked. Don't you think most of the time now questions are on the basis of relative chronology or chronological sequence than absolute chronology? And if absolute chronology asked, then the dates are so important that you can't forget them. Questions may be like this. Consider the following events. Suppose the Indian national movement. Consider the following events in the Indian national movement. First, Swadeshi movement. Second, Rowlatt Act Satyagraha. Third, Simon Commission. Fourth, August Declaration. Fifth, individual Satyagraha. You must be familiar with this kind of details. Have you considered these events? Now the question is something like this. Which of the following represents their correct chronological order? Option A, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Option B, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Option C, something like this. Option D also like this. Do you think that in order to answer these kind of questions, you should specifically remember the dates of all these events? No. Know the national movement. Be familiar with the national movement. You can easily understand that Swadeshi movement was the first all India movement even before Gandhi. Gandhian mass movements, it acquired some sort of mass dimension which displayed all the major political tendencies associated with the Swadeshi movement. Since Swadeshi is very important, any declaration related to Swadeshi or which was understood as a declaration related to Swadeshi is also going to be important, and that was Montague Declaration 1917, 20th of August. And then when this was not fulfilled, and when we have Punjab disturbances, we have Rowlatt Act, then we have Simon Commission, then we have individual satyagraha in the overall context of the Second World War. So don't waste your energies unnecessarily in remembering all the dates for these events. Try to develop larger picture, try to be familiar with the greater story, grand narrative, because this is general study, always remember. And here you are not preparing for banking, not preparing for SSC, not preparing for railways. In one day competitions, those kind of approaches are still or can still be important, but for UPSC, I don't think that this much labor is required. Is this position clear? Here you have more important things to do than mugging up the dates and details. It is not that our task is easy, our task is more difficult, but the nature is somewhat different. Is it okay? So Gupta Empire was built mostly by Samudragupta, but his successor, major successor, in between again we have a ruler, but whose historicity is somehow disputed. You must have heard of that very famous narrative about Chandragupta II killing a Shaka ruler, who had defeated his brother Ram Gupta, and Ramagupta had accepted to surrender his wife Dhurva Devi, and now younger brother, this is Devar Bhabhi relation we can say, younger brother felt humiliated and he decided to kill the Shaka ruler. All these narratives are there. Historians generally don't believe in this kind of narratives. But there is a ruler known as Ramagupta whose 2 coins have been discovered. But still the historicity of Ramagupta is doubtful, and even otherwise we are not interested in minor rulers whose accomplishments are not well known or well documented. So from Samudragupta we can directly shift to Chandragupta II. We can ignore others in between. Now if we talk about cultural accomplishments of Chandragupta II, so in his court we find Navratnas. Do you know about Navratnas? In the court of Akbar also we have Navratnas. We are not interested in all of them, and some of them are not known also, but 2 of them are particularly important. Kalidas and Amar Singh. I have mentioned the works of Kalidas in your class notes. Those people who have gone through the class notes must be knowing. Kalidas, known as Shakespeare of India. Why not Shakespeare known as Kalidas of England? This person, Samudragupta, on the basis of Prayag Prasasti, came to be known as Napoleon of India. Why not Napoleon as Samudragupta of France? Why? This is all about perspective. This is all about the location of the dominant narrative. Getting this idea? We have what is called as Eurocentric approaches. Europe-centric approaches, that is looking at the world history from the perspective of or from the point of view of Europe. So rise of Europe is rise of the whole world, decline of Europe is decline of the whole world, and that's why in the post Second World War scenario, when we have decline of empires and European powers, there was a narrative related to decline of the whole world. And I don't think that they have manipulated things. This is how the world is perhaps. Because in India also, who are victim of this kind of domination, We have the same tendency. We know about Ganga, we know about Godavari both. Have you ever heard of this way, that Godavari is Ganga of the south? Have you ever heard this way, that Ganga is Godavari of the north? Why? Indian history, Indian culture perceived mainly through the perspective of North India. Getting this idea? So हंस चुनेगा दाना, कौवा मोती खाएगा. You must have heard of the description of Kaljug. So this is Kaljug, and Kaljug is the era of decline. And what will happen? Hans chunega dana. There are some people who have explained some of the characteristics. And Kauva Moti khayega. Those people who don't know about this or not familiar with Hindi, let me translate this for them into English in a very crude manner. Hans is what? Swan, S-W-A-N, and Kauva is crow. So usually what happens? Hans chunega dana. Dana is food grain. Moti is pearl. So of course human beings can't eat pearl. Likewise birds and animals also can't eat pearl. But this is symbolic. That is a more luxurious position who is placed. So who is placed in Kaljug in more luxurious position? Crow. Because crow is associated with eating pearl and swan is associated with dana, that is food grains. Getting this idea? So कहते हैं ना दूध में नहाओ. Have you ever tried it? No, milk bath. We have milk bar, of course. But there are people who are taking different types of baths. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe some of you are familiar with this kind of baths, but I have never taken it. So now you tell me, from whose perspective Kaljug is the time of decline? Hans ke perspective say it can be called a phase of decline. But if we look at the same scenario from the perspective of Kauva, then can Kaljug can be accepted as a phase of decline? No. So now it depends whether you are Hans or Kauva. And again, it is not about a reality, it is about your identity, that how you identify yourself. So if you identify yourself with the Hans, of course it is a miserable time for you. If you identify yourself with a Kauva and you are qualified enough to identify yourself with both of them, don't worry about it. So how many of you think that Kaljug is the time of decline? None of you? Or some of you? All of you? Kaljug is the time of decline? See, older generations generally have this grand narrative of decline. And younger generations are cursed. They are accused of what? Forgetting some norms, old norms and values. Everywhere we have this kind of decline. In history, in culture, in families also. You must be knowing about the declining narratives. ऐसे निकम्मे बच्चे पैदा हो गए. Must have heard of निकम्मी औलादें. Incompetent, that is not capable of carrying the glorious legacy of the family. Okay. So how many of you are counted among them? Almost all of us. This is what age bias we can say, or generation bias we can say, कि in the eyes of older generation, new generations are incompetent. In our perspective, they are ignorant, isn't it? But what from the perspective of history? Don't you think despite all these narratives of decline, history is moving towards more progress and more happier position? So medieval people, ancient people were very good. They were very moral people, so they believed in slavery. And today we are fighting for not only human rights but also for animal rights. Though we have our limitations, but moral frontier, ideological frontier, they are advancing, isn't it? So that kind of conflict will continue. So we can have regional biases, we can have cultural biases, we can have personal biases, and all these things are part of historical reconstruction. So whenever you come across all these things, never bother yourself, because you are not a politician. You are not a politician. If something is controversial, write that the matter is controversial. That should be the first line of your answer. Who are you to settle that controversy? Getting this idea? So whether the revolt of 1857 was a national revolt or not, so don't be judgmental. Don't make verdict. UPSC has not invited you to the examination hall to settle this dispute. Getting this idea? You just display your knowledge about this controversy. Yes, sir, this is a perspective related to the revolt of 1857, in which the revolt is perceived as a nationalist revolt on the following grounds. However, we have other perspectives also, not accepting it as a nationalist revolt. In conclusion, what you can write? Mr. A is wrong or Mr. B is wrong? No, this is not your job. Thus, we see that the matter is still controversial and different historians have expressed their opinions differently depending upon their historical, socio-ideological locations. Full stop. Answer complete. You have not settled the dispute. You have not said anything on your own, because we are not qualified enough to have our own opinions. So even if they ask you, give your own opinion, never fall into this trap. Your own opinion is not your personal opinion. Your opinion formed on the basis of the information that you have gathered from the study of a particular discipline. Getting this idea? So whether Gupta age was golden age? Now tell me. Neither yes nor no. Now this is an opinion formed on the basis of high level cultural accomplishments noticed in the Gupta time, which is evident from the literary activities of the poets like Kali Das, grammarians like Amar Singh. Getting this idea? And all these things. However, this view has been challenged on factual as well as on perceptual ground. Getting this idea? Factually, we have some disturbing developments. For example, we have increasing popularity of untouchability. That is, you must be knowing about Fahian, who mentions about untouchability. Then we have economic declining tendencies in the economic life. So, what is your conclusion? The matter remains disputed. Those people who see the Gupta age as a golden age pay more attention to these and these things. Those people who don't see highlight these and these things, and Gupta age has been seen differently by different historians. You first exclude yourself from that controversy. You are not part of that. You are observer. Is this position clear? So Kalidas, Shakespeare of India, not Shakespeare as Kalidas of India. That is display of what we can say Eurocentric approach. But these approaches are quite common in history and they can be found even at local levels. Now, can you tell me about some works of Kalidas? How many of you are familiar with Kalidas? It is not that every time you have to read about Kalidas in history textbooks. We are part of Indian culture. We are experiencing Indian culture. We are products of Indian culture. So, we are familiar with so many things about Indian culture, isn't it? So, you tell me. Meghdoot. Okay, what is the subject matter of Meghdoot? Subject matter of Meghdoot. At times we should pay attention to the subject matter also. Love songs, बहुत interesting है. Yaksha Yakshini. Yaksha from this side of the Himalayas, Yakshini from that side of the Himalaya, from Tibet perhaps. We exactly don't know. And you must be knowing that naturally moving objects have been used as messengers. Pawan, Hawa, some Bollywood songs, the same boycotted Bollywood. आए पवन जाके बोलना. पवन को पास और कोई दूसरा काम नहीं. Pawan is going to tell your message. आए हवा मेरे साथ साथ चल. कहाँ है भाई? जा कहाँ रहे हो ये तो बताओ. ठीक है. So generally we invite these kind of things. Kabutar, that is what. Kabutar ja. Kabutar बोला नहीं जाऊंगा. क्यों जाऊं? What is my interest in that? ठीक है. So likewise clouds, बादल, बादल जाके बोलना. बादल पर कोई दूसरा काम नहीं है. कौवा, people have not left even कौवा, crow. You must have heard of in some Sufi verses. There was a movie Rock Star long back when I was kid. Yes, thank you. Rock Star. In that movie, we have what? There is a some verses of a very famous Sufi poet whose name is. He was from Punjab. Can anyone tell me his name? He was the guru of this Nizamuddin Aulia, Baba Farid. Kaga, have you ever heard of? Kaga Nayan Nikas Dum, something like this. Or Kaga Re Kaga, something like this. All of you are familiar with these things. So Kawa, Kaga, Kabutar. So Kalidas was also a poet, and poets have relied upon these things. So he was relying upon cloud. And cloud is messenger. Okay, instead of WhatsApp and what we can say, Facebook. And through clouds, Yaksha is sending his messages to Yakshini. Getting this idea? And Kalidas is the composer of these messages of Yaksha. The feelings of Yaksha, basically, feelings of Kali Das. Any other work? There are many. Kumar Sambhavam. Okay, what is the subject matter of Kumar Sambhavam? I have mentioned all subject matters also in your class notes. Okay, so what is the subject matter? Read the class notes. Read the class notes. If you are taking classes seriously, you will have to take class notes also very seriously. Clear? So, Kumar Sambhav is about the birth of Kumar Kartikeya. Kartikeya, do you know? Brother of Lord Ganesha and son of Lord Shiva. But why Kartikeya is not as popular as Lord Shiva, Lord Ganesha? Or popular, we don't know. Anyone who is worshipper of Kartikeya here? Anyone who is worshipper of Ganesha here? Yes, the whole class. So why Kartikeya is ignored? In South India. Okay, in South India we have worshippers of Kartikeya. Then we have here another work of Kalidas, the most famous work, which was translated into English by James William Jones, the founder of Asiatic Society of Bengal. That was Abhigyan Shakuntalam. What is the subject matter of Abhigyan Shakuntalam? Shakuntala and Dushyant. That is about Gandharva, a marriage without performance of rituals. And then Devi Chandra Gupta, or that Vikram or Vashiya, Vikram and Urvasi. Urvasi, we all know Menaka, Urvasi, Rambha. One such, yes, Urvasi, and Kalidas was fooling his mentor, master. Master was happy. So, love affair between Chandragupta, second Vikramaditya and Urvashi. We all understand that this love affair cannot be real, but love is more pleasurable when imagined, more painful when experienced. Isn't it? So love in imagination and love in reality. So it is better that fall in love in imagination, and that's why poets have all the pleasure. And those people who take their composition seriously, they feel all the pain, and poets are very observant of that pain. So most of the time the pain and agony we experience have been created by the poets. They have provided us with the role model, how we have to react, how we have to behave in certain situations. So poets are saying ki dil toot gaya, so we also start feeling ki dil toot gaya. The heart is broken in English. And poets say that after dil tootna, everything is lost. Poets have told us. So we also start experiencing that everything is lost. So our emotional responses are also socially conditioned. What do you think? And that's why love is experienced in different cultures and different societies differently. Getting this idea? It is not uniform. There is nothing uniform about this construct called love across the world. In different culture, we have different experiences, and all those experiences are socially and ideologically conditioned. And while or in conditioning those experiences, poets and authors have played very important role. So Kalidas is one such architect of love in India. That the idea of love being constructed by a Kalidas कि हवा जाके बोल देना, बादल जाके बोल देना, खुद जाके बोल. Pavan and Badal. Okay, so, but see, before this time, when we have WhatsApp and what we can say, messengers and modern mobile phones, okay, sending love letters always a very difficult enterprise. How to send love letters? Okay, so have you ever experienced this kind of situation? कि जाके आपको किसी दूसरे के लिए बोलना पड़ा और या किसी दूसरे का लेटर जाके किसी को देना पड़ा. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू हैव एक्सपीरियंस दिस? बदमाश लोग बैठे. ठीक है. सो दोस थिंग्स वर वेरी डिफिकल्ट. टुडे इट्स वेरी इजी. सो अमर सिम्हा is also important along with Kalidas. Read Kalidas as much as possible. Read his works if you have interest in literature. That will throw you to, that will expose you to what we can say the many aspects of Indian culture which textbooks cannot provide, which textbooks cannot give. Amar Singh has written Amar Kosh, that is the first dictionary of what we can say Sanskrit language, and this is very important source for historical reconstruction because here we have explanation of different terms, concepts, notions, emotions as part of this enterprise. But the person is also associated with military conquests. It is not about extending patronage to literature, poets and artists. It is also about what we can say his military conquest, and there is a pillar at Mehrauli in Delhi that is known as Iron Pillar. Some of you may have seen this Iron Pillar that is in Delhi itself, and those who have not seen should ask yourself this question: why have you not seen yet? That is in Delhi. Have you ever visited Qutub Complex? In Qutub Complex, that is a World Heritage site, you can see this pillar. Now this pillar of course is known for its technological aspects, but also known for an inscription. And in that inscription we find mention of a ruler whose identity is not clear, but that ruler is mentioned as Chandra. That ruler is mentioned as a Chandra, and this Chandra has been given credit for conquering the areas of northwestern India. Now this Chandra is identified with Chandragupta II Vikramaditya. This ruler assumed the title of Vikramaditya, which is one of the most frequently assumed title in the Indian history. His name was also Devgupta. So if the question is who is associated with the Iron Pillar of Mehrauli, the answer is Chandragupta II Vikramaditya or Devgupta. And who is mentioned as Chandra? Chandragupta II Vikramaditya, who conquered northwestern parts of the subcontinent. Getting this idea? And then he is also given credit for defeating Shakas. Defeating Shakas and issuing silver coins. Shakas were particularly known for their silver coins. And it is here we have that story of Dhruva Devi. Yes. Well, that was Chandragupta first. Copper, sorry, gold. Gold. Gupta coins are not generally found on of cheap metals. Gupta coins are mostly on made of precious metals like gold and silver. Getting this, and copper pieces are just very few. We are going to talk about this aspect very soon, but I have kept it for Indian feudalism. That is a general discussion on the nature of Indian economy and changing dynamics of Indian economy in the ancient time when we move from ancient to medieval. Clear? So Shaka ruler, whose name is not very clear, was defeated. So this man cultural accomplishments, and this man also had a daughter. The name of the daughter was Prabhavati Devi, and Prabhavati Devi was married to a Vakataka prince, and Vakataka prince died soon, and this lady whose name is Prabhavati Devi managed the affairs of the Vakataka estate in the Deccan, and while managing the affairs of the Vakataka kingdom, she was guided by her father Chandragupta II Vikramaditya. So we at this time find extension of the Gupta influence even towards the Deccan or towards the south, and here also a matrimonial alliance played very important role. Is this position clear? Then after him we have rulers like Kumara Gupta. His reign is not that much important from military point of view, because this was time for what we can say the decline and disintegration. But this man established, or during his time we have establishment of the famous University of Nalanda. Have you ever heard of Nalanda? So Nalanda University during the reign of Kumara Gupta first. Then we have the last major ruler whose name is Askand Gupta, who faced the invasion of Hunas. So this much about the Gupta rulers. Now if we talk about the society during the Gupta time, the same society continued with Varna division, with caste division, with more identities, more formation of local identities, that is what we can say proliferation of castes. Now all those ancient Indian processes continued, but at the same time we have absorption of foreigners into the Indian society. That is, all those Hunas and Gurjaras who invaded India during this time, they got assimilated into the Indian society. But two developments are particularly noticed. The first is untouchability. We exactly don't know the exact origin of untouchability. And that's why in history at times we don't talk about origin, because we can't explain origin. We don't have sources to reconstruct. In history there are many things which are not known, many dark patches in history. But when things become important, when they become evident, those points are taken into a consideration. So during the reign of Chandragupta II Vikramaditya, we have visit of a Chinese traveler whose name is Fahian. Fahian nowadays also written like this, Faxian. Chinese names keep on changing like Chinese products. They are also not long lasting. So Huan Sang earlier spelled differently, nowadays we have different spelling. The same is true with Mao Tse Tung. So when we were in the schools, we had Mao Tse Tung. Now we have Mao Zedong. So don't worry about all these things. Fahian, Faxian. So Fahian visited India. He was a Buddhist monk. I think I have said something about Fahian also. No, I'll be sharing some lines about Fahian. The same thing which we are discussing in written form. Fahian visited in the 4th century AD when Chandragupta II Vikramaditya was the ruler, and Fahian visited even Patliputra, the old Mauryan capital. And there he noticed the old Mauryan palace, and he was mesmerized by that old Mauryan palace. But he is particularly known for making references to Chandalas. According to him, according to Fahian, Chandalas lived in the quarters which were separate from the towns, mostly situated at the southern side. At the southern side, and whenever these Chandalas entered the towns, they used to produce some sounds, strange sounds, by striking wooden stick, something like this. And what was the reason? It was warning to the inhabitants that we are approaching the city, so kindly move away because our sites are polluting. So this kind of notions, and we have clear-cut evidence of untouchability given by Fahian, and that evidence belonged to the Gupta time. We are not saying that it originated in the Gupta time, but there is a very famous evidence related to this practice, and that's why those people who criticize Gupta period for certain reasons, they particularly highlight this point, why and how a period of Indian history in which we have untouchability can be accepted as golden period of Indian history. Getting this idea? And then one more, that first inscriptional evidence of Sati. First inscriptional evidence of Sati, 510 AD. There is an inscription that is known as, all these details there in your class notes, Aaron inscription, belonging to the reign of Askandagupta. And in that Aaron inscription, Aaron is somewhere perhaps in the eastern UP, in that Aaron inscription, there is mention of a lady who was wife of a commander of Askandagupta who had lost his life in a battle, and that lady committed a sati. So these two developments during the Gupta period are particularly important, untouchability and sati. Is this position clear? Otherwise, the basic structure of the society continued with minor changes, and Gupta rulers were Vaishya by caste. So they were neither Brahmanas nor Kshatriyas. We have Vaishya ruling dynasty, but then this kind of issues which are particularly related to social identities always remain controversial. Now Gupta rulers believed in the theory of divine origin of kingship. Divine origin of a kingship, and some of them claimed that they were incarnations of Vishnu. And this was the time when Vaishnavism was also on the rise. So possibly they were trying to legitimize their political position in the name of what we can say some religious ideology, something that is not uncommon in the history, even in the modern history. Is this position clear? Then Gupta political system, if we take note of it, was more feudal than the Kushanas, and the journey towards decentralization continued. And by the time we have the Gupta rulers, we have high sounding titles like Maharaja Dhiraj, Param Bhattarak, Param Saugat, Parameshwar. So there are people who say that we have this kind of titles which are suggestive of the magnificence and what we can say the power, but at the same time they also express the weaknesses of the political systems. So if you are Rajaon ka Raja, that is king of kings, it means other kings are there. And if other kings are there, they are ruling over their territories. And to what extent they are going to accept your claim and your position as a ruler, that can also be quite controversial. So this is called a feudal system. So their political system was more feudalized. We have decline of bureaucracy also, because now we have hereditary offices, and whenever we have hereditary offices, we say that there is decline of bureaucracy, because in any bureaucratic system we have offices given to the people who deserve. So Mauryas had their own system of what we can say. In case of Mauryas, we don't have Mauryan Civil Services Commission, but it is generally believed that the offices were not given on hereditary basis. But hereditary principles had become quite well entrenched by the time we have the Gupta dynasty, and this person whose name was Hari Sen, a little earlier we talked about him, had been occupying a post which had been occupied also by his ancestors. We also have combination of offices, that is one person given more than one offices. We have also dilution of the system of payment in cash, and we have increasing popularity of payment also in for payment through land grants. So all these are suggestive of what we can say declining tendencies. Some of these tendencies I have mentioned in your class notes, and the same tendencies continued under Harsha, our next topic now. About Harsha also I have mentioned certain things, but I think this is time for your break. Have the break, and after the break we are going to talk about Harsha and one more foreign traveler whose name is Huensang. Getting this idea? And after that, we can shift to the medieval time. So, welcome back, both offline, online. Is it yours? So, some of you are not finding some works of Kalidas in your as part of your class notes. Okay, what I have done perhaps is that I have separated the works of Kalidas, considering it to be part of literature. Literature is something that is part of a culture. So I will be including, because talking about the time of Guptas without talking about Kalidas is something I hope understand not possible. So I will be including, and then the description of India given by Fahian and important points, that also I would be including. So don't worry about that. The missing parts would be shared with you very soon. Is this position clear? Now we know what happened after Guptas. We have foreign invasions, we have political chaos, disorder, anarchy. Finally we have Harsha emerging out of all this, being accepted as by historians as the last great ruler. Now his greatness is that there used to be a question when history, of course history even today is an optional subject. So Harsha was great, but was made greater by Ban Bhatt and Huensang. So Harsha is great, there is no doubt about it, but was made greater by these two gentlemen. One, his court poet friend, whose name is Ban Bhatt, another a foreign traveler who visited India during his reign, and whose name is Huensang, a famous name. So Harsha is great. How Harsha can be considered as great? Because in an overall context of decline, disintegration, decentralization, feudalization, he maintained political unity for a long period of time, or at least so long as he ruled. So he was great not because his empire was larger than the Mauryan Empire or the Gupta Empire. Our achievements and our accomplishments are context specific. Major achievements, minor achievements, whether they are major or minor, all depends upon the context. So Harsha ruled in the first half of the 7th century, and by the time we have the 7th century, political disintegration and decentralization and decentralizing tendencies which started after the disintegration of the Mauryan Empire were on rise everywhere. So we can say that Harsha was swimming against the currents of his time. What were the currents of his time? Again, political instability, chaos, disorder, disorganization, but he maintained unity. Though his political system was also very feudal. And Huensang says that in some of the assemblies which Harsha convened, we have participation of more than 300 rulers who had come from different parts of the country. It means these 300 rulers were local rulers who managed the affairs of the state at local level and had allegiance or a sense of allegiance towards Harsha. To what extent Harsha was capable of controlling them or using their resources is something that is not clear to us. But one thing is clear, that the political system of Harsha was also a feudal, and feudalizing and decentralizing tendencies continued even in the reign of Harsha. So Harsha is great because of maintaining political unity, at least in North India. The name of his dynasty is Pushyabhuti. His capital was at Kannauj, but that was not the early capital. Early capital was Thaneshwar. Thaneshwar is somewhere in Haryana. But under what circumstances this capital was shifted from Thaneshwar to Kannauj is also very interesting. And here comes the role of a personal tragedy in his life. And Ban Bhatt, who is court poet, author of Harsh Charita, which is regarded as the first work of secular biography. Do you understand what is biography? Do you understand what is autobiography? How many of you have started writing your autobiographies? None of you? Start writing diaries and they are going to take the form of your autobiography. But there are people say that autobiographies are always what? Bunch of lies. What do you think about them? Is it so? But even a liar can tell one truth about himself or herself. And what is that truth? That is a liar. Isn't it? He is a liar. One truth is revealed. So, the earliest biography is Buddha Charita, written by Ashwaghosh in ancient India during early Christian centuries, who lived in the court of Kushana ruler Kanishka. And then what happened? Buddha was exalted to the position of God, and this biography became sacred and became part of what we can say religious literature. And that's why if they ask you first biographical work in India, then the answer is Buddha Charita without specifying. But if they ask you first secular biography in India, then the answer is Harsh Charita, written by Ban Bhatt. Now Ban Bhatt starts the story of Harsha in a very romantic way. The story unfolds like the story of a Hindi movie. We have a happy family. In that happy family, we have a father who is ruler, and we have two princes, brothers, Rajyavardhan and Harshvardhan, with a sister, Rajya Shri. And they are living their life happily at Thaneshwar. Meanwhile, something happens. There is entry of a villain in their lives. And that villain was a local ruler of Gauda. Gaud area is Bengal area. It means in that area also now we have a state formation. And that ruler is mentioned as Shashank, the enemy of Harsha. Shashank invaded. Shashank, like Harsha, a follower of Lord Shiva. Shashank, follower of Lord Shiva. Harsha also a follower of Lord Shiva. But if we rely upon the description given by Huensang, Harsha had accepted Buddhism under the influence of Huensang. This claim has been made by Huensang. And then what happened? There was an enmity between the two, Shashank and Harsha. Harsha invaded this kingdom, that is Pushyabhuti, and something very bad happened. First invasion was on Kannauj. Kannauj, where Rajya Shri was married. That family, that is Grah Varman, was the king. These factual details we can skip. Simply, Sasanka invaded, killed his brother-in-law. Bahnoi in Hindi. Have you heard of? Damadji for the elder generation. So, it was tragedy. Now the sister was a widow, and she went to the forests of central India to perform sati. Sati has been criticized by Ban Bhatt. Remember this. We have many thinkers in India who have criticized sati. Ban Bhatt is one of them. The reason is that now Rajyashri was to perform sati, and her life was saved by Harshvardhan, who found him in the forest of central India. And Harshvardhan played the role what Raja Ram Mohan Rai was to play in the 19th century, that he saved his sister from performing a sati. This has been celebrated by Banbhat. So if there is a list of ancient thinkers and the question is who of the following has criticized a sati, and if you find Banbhat, go for Banbhat. Clear? Then Badla, there is a word which has gained currency in our socio-cultural life in the recent past, and that is what? Badla. Have you heard of Badla? So Badla lega. Faisal, you must be knowing a character. There was a popular movie. माई का, भाई का, बाप का, पता नहीं किस किस का, सबका बदला लेगा फैजल. So So Bahnoi was killed. Elder brother Rajyavardhan was also killed by Shashanka. So भाई का, बहनोई का, सबका बदला कौन लेगा? Faisal. And who was Faisal in this context? Harshvardhan. But he could never take revenge. Shashanka always remained more powerful than Harsha. And he could never defeat Harsha. And meanwhile, Shashanka did one more thing. He destroyed the Bodhi tree. Do you know about Bodhi tree? At Bodh Gaya, there was a tree, people tree perhaps. Beneath that tree, Buddha had got his enlightenment. And that tree was sacred for the Buddhist. Shashanka, while invading Harsha or his family or Kannauj, came across this tree and someone told him, okay, this is the tree worshipped by Harsha, okay, destroy it. So attack on religious symbols, religious, what we can say, structures, something. The history goes back to even ancient time. That is, in order to humiliate or in order to, what we can say, defeat the rulers, people used to assault their religious symbols. Shashanka represented the same tradition. He destroyed the Bodhi tree. So Shashanka is known for two things: destroying the Bodhi tree and being rival of a more famous ruler who was Harsha, and causing the personal tragedy which led to the rise of Harsha as a ruler. Now Harsha had to manage two kingdoms: his own kingdom after the death of his father and brother, and the kingdom of his brother-in-law Bahnoi after his death, in order to help Rajya Shri, his sister. So he shifted his capital from Thaneshwar to Kannauj, and Kannauj became now a new seat of political power and influence, a city which became a bone of contention later on among the three great powers, causing what is known as tripartite struggle. We have the sketch, so we can relate now. Is this position clear? Now, let this personal story aside now. Just know that all these things are mentioned in Harsh Charita of Banbhat. More important is the description given by Huyen Sang. Now Huyen Sang says, first thing, that he was a follower of Buddhism. Who? Harsha. Not follower of Shaivism. And he accepted Buddhism under the influence of Huyen Sang, who was a Chinese Buddhist monk who visited India like Fahian in search of what we can say knowledge and all Buddhist manuscripts and texts. Huyen Sang is the only Chinese traveler who visited almost the whole of the Indian subcontinent. That is, even the South Indian areas visited by Huyen Sang. Huyen Sang wrote a book. The title of this book is Siyuki. And in that Siyuki, he makes some comments about Harsha, some comments about his kingdom, some comments about his connection with Harsha. And he presents himself as the closest person to Harsha, whose influence became so great on Harsha that Harsha left his original faith, and that was Shaivism, and accepted Buddhism. Now, in general, this person, whose name is Huyen Sang, remained associated with the famous Nalanda University. First as a learner, then as a teacher. A general pattern generally found in Central universities. That people pursuing their PhD and all those higher education courses, they prefer what? Placement in the same university. So that was the case with Huensang. Huensang was follower of Mahayana Buddhism and Nalanda was a major center of Mahayana Buddhism. If we visit the monastery at Nalanda, there the local guides would be indicating what, pointing to the room where Huensang lived. But all those things are based on just myths and legends. We precisely don't know. But one thing is clear, that Huensang remained connected with the Nalanda University. Then he says that in order to provide him an opportunity to have discussion with the Brahmanas, knowledgeable sections of the Indian society, Harsha convened two assemblies. The first assembly at Kannauj, that was his capital, and the second assembly at Prayag. These two assemblies, religious assemblies, convened by Harsha, inviting Brahmanas to have discussion with whom? This Chinese Buddhist scholar Huensang. All these claims are being made by Huensang in his book Siyuki. And then what happened? He says that he defeated all. Who? Huensang. Defeated all, and Harsha was very much pleased. Finally, what happened? Some Brahmanas who had been defeated started some conspiracy to kill Huensang. Somehow this conspiracy was exposed, revealed, and Harsha gave exemplary punishments to the Brahmanas. This is again, who is mentioning? Huensang. Huensang is praising Harsha for not giving harsh punishments to the culprits. That Harsha, his judicial system was very good, but despite this, he maintained law and order very efficiently. Who? Harsha. Who is saying? Huensang. That he did not give harsh punishments, still maintained what we can say, law and order. And there is a very famous story that is used metaphorically by many authors in the ancient time, also in the medieval time, to suggest better conditions of law and order. And that is what? An old lady with a basket of gold on her head can move even in the midnight anywhere without any fear. This is something which Abbas Khan Sherwani says about Sher Shah Suri, that even an old lady with a basket of gold on her head in the night can move. That is not important. What is important is can move without any fear. Without any fear. Law and order was so well maintained in the kingdom of Harsha. Huensang is saying this. In the same book, he is also saying some more things. He admits that he himself was looted twice. Who? A friend of the king, enjoying a special position in his empire, protected by the royal guards possibly, was looted twice. But that old lady was safe. So this is quite ironical. Harsha was great, but was made greater by Banbhat and Huensang. Now you understand, I hope, the spirit of this observation. That is all about making exaggerated claims. So there is something that is called salt, namak, and there is something that is called being namak halal. That is being true to one's salt. UPSC had asked a question on this year. But why Indian resources, Indian soldiers remained loyal and served the East India Company quite loyally, isn't it? Have you seen the questions? Questions are being based on opinions. So he himself looted twice, but kept on writing that law and order was well maintained, and that old lady in the midnight with a basket of gold on her head was safe. And then he also mentions one episode which he faced in India, that he was captured by some people somewhere in the eastern part. We precisely don't know. Eastern parts of the subcontinent particularly known for magic, charms, spells, jadoo, tona, totka. And it was also a time when Tantrism was on rise. And in Tantrism we have system of slaughtering, not only of animals but also of men in some cases. So this person was captured by some people and they wanted him to sacrifice. Then for some female divinity. Most of the time sacrifices are associated with female divinities which are usually worshipped as part of a Tantrism. For example, goddess Kali, Durga. So we don't have system of offerings or sacrifices at least for the deities of the mainstream like Lord Rama, Lord Krishna. Have you ever found this? That some animal sacrificed for Lord Rama, Lord Krishna? That is not the case. Most of the time we have Eastern India and Eastern deities, female divinities. So he was captured and he was about to be sacrificed. But meanwhile, according to Huen Sang, there was a storm and darkness came to prevail all around, and taking advantage of this situation, this Chinese item fled. So now he thanked Buddha for this. Why? Because by this time even Buddha had been exalted to the position of God. So how Buddha can allow this kind of crime against his devotee? So he thanks Buddha that my life was saved by Buddha and it was direct divine intervention from Buddha. So Huen Sang in India enjoyed the patronage not only of Harsha but also of Buddha. Lord and God both on his side. And all these descriptions we find in his book Siyuki. To what extent he can be relied upon again is a matter of dispute, debates and discussions. One thing is clear, that he throws valuable light on the life of a Harsha, and he mentions that Harsha divided his income into 4 parts and one part was kept for charity. So Harsha is also associated with reviving the welfare approach of the estate, which we notice for the first time in case of Ashok. And he was a great donor. And then he says, who? Again the same person, that at Prayag, in the second assembly, Harsha donated everything, all his possessions, including his personal belongings and personal dresses. And there came a time when Harsha had nothing. So he borrowed dresses from his sister, Rajya Shri. ठीक है, अपने कपड़े डोनेट कर दिए, राजेश्वरी के कपड़े मांगे. नाउ दिस इज नॉट क्लियर इन हिस्ट्री कि राजेश्वरी के पास इसके कपड़े थे. अक्सर सिस्टर्स भाई के कपड़े रखती हैं, ऐसा क्या? या कि कॉमन ड्रेसेस थे मेल एंड फीमेल के? वी एग्जैक्टली डोंट नो, बट व्हेन सांग मेंशंस कि उसने सब कुछ डोनेट कर दिया और अपनी बहन से कपड़े मांग के पहने. दैट इज नॉट क्लियर कि किसके कपड़े, इसके कपड़े उसके पास रखे थे कि बहन के ही कपड़े इसने पहने. There it can be a matter of historical research. Nowadays we have expanding a scope of history. People are more interested in food habits, dresses, cultural aspects are more important. That is day-to-day activities of the people more important than what we can say the role played by the great rulers within inverted a comma in the course of or in shaping the course of historical evolution. So कभी आपका मन करे तो करना रिसर्च इस पे, पता लगाना ये कपड़े किसके थे जो हर्षा ने प्रयाग में मांग के पहने थे अपनी बहन से. ठीक है, या फिर कॉमन ड्रेसेस हो सकती, लुंगी पहन लिया. लुंगी, डू यू नो लुंगी? देयर इज अ ड्रेस इन नॉर्थ इंडिया. ठीक है, मेल फीमेल कोई भी पहन सकता है लुंगी. ठीक है, so how many of you have used lungi ever? Not for dancing purpose. बिकॉज देर इज अ डांस ऑल्सो दैट इज कॉल्ड लुंगी डांस. ठीक है, और वो उसके लिए नहीं, उसके लिए स्पेशली पहना हो परफॉर्मेंस के लिए. नो, डे टू डे लाइफ में लुंगी पहनने वाले लोग हाथ उठा दें. 1 2 3 4. हाँ ठीक है, अभी थोड़ा कल्चर बचा हुआ है. बाकी लोग सब किस पे शिफ्ट हो गए हैं बताओ? कुछ और पहन रहे हो? कुछ और पहन रहे हो. अब गांव में भी लोग लुंगी नहीं पहनते. क्या वो ट्राउजर्स और लोअर्स और पता नहीं क्या क्या कहलाते हैं वो, पायजामाज. नो, हाँ. तो the time in which we are living, that is the first quarter of the 21st century and the last quarter of the previous century. This is a time for momentous changes in almost all aspects of life. Basically, we are living through a revolutionary time in almost every aspect of life. Most of the time when we witness revolutions, we don't realize it. But later generations of historians are going to perceive this period as a revolutionary period. That is, great transformations have taken place. The things which had lasted for centuries have come to an end, and the things which are going to last for centuries are appearing on the scene, on the horizon. Do you know about joint family system? See the family structure, changing family structure. Joint family system since the Vedic time continued. Don't you think we all have some connection with the joint family system? This is the last generation. See the changes. How many of you are planning your life in as part of joint family system? We are product of joint family system, but very few of us have prospects. Even if you are planning, very few of us have prospects to live life under joint family system. Getting this idea? The nature of marriage relationship, that is also a changing. The family structure is changing. What happened to the old games played in the villages? First they were killed by cricket. That what about gilli danda? What about all those things? Now nobody plays them. We have a river in the village, but nobody knows how to swim. People are highly protected. Villages, trees and those big trees in the villages, they remain what? Unclimbed, we can say. अब उन पे कोई चढ़ता नहीं. When we were kids, so we find what? Most of the time games were about the trees and the different types of games. Water games and others. Festivals, the way we celebrated festivals, Holi, Deepavali, Dasahara. Don't you think these methods are also changing? All those traditional games were killed by cricket, and now cricket is being killed by mobile. PUBG, yes, PUBG. तो बहुत सारे changes हो रहे हैं. There are many changes which are taking place in different aspects of our life, socially, politically, morally, technologically, which are going to be quite revolutionary. So this much about Harsha and his friend Huensang, his biographer Banbhat. Rest of the details I have included. When Harsha was ruling in the north, in the Deccan, after the disintegration of Satavahanas, we for some time have Vakatakas, and after Vakatakas we have Chalukyas. The dynasty was founded by a person whose name was Pulkesin II. Pulkesin first, not second. The capital was Batapi, also known as Badami. So this dynasty known as the dynasty of Chalukyas of Badami or Chalukyas of Batapi, or simply early Chalukyas. We also use the expression early Chalukyas for this dynasty, founded by Pulkesin I. But Pulkesin I was not the most famous ruler of this dynasty. The most famous ruler of this dynasty was Pulkesin II. Now Pulkesin II was a contemporary of Harshvardhan, Harsha, and both were familiar. Both knew each other, and this gentleman, whose name was Huensang, is known for visiting not only Harsha but also Pulkesin II. So Huensang also visited the Chalukya court at Badami or Batapi. We just discussed that he was a Chinese traveler who visited, or the only Chinese traveler who visited the mainland of South India. Now there is a very famous episode, and that episode is related to a battle, and that battle took place on the bank of river Narmada. Between whom? Pulkesin II and Harshvardhan. And in that battle, who emerged victorious? Pulkesin II. It means when Pulkesin II ruled, he was the most powerful ruler. Earlier he had defeated also Pallava ruler Mahendra Varman in the extreme south. Now we know all the locations. We have discussed the general pattern. So Pulkesin II, very famous ruler, whose achievements have been mentioned by his court poet, whose name is Ravi Kirti. Ravi Kirti. And there is an inscription that is known as Aihole inscription. That inscription is in Sanskrit. It means Sanskrit, even in the 7th century, was the language of inscriptions even in the south and in the Deccan. And in that inscription, Ravi Kirti compares himself with Kalidas and some other poets of the time. And he says that his wisdom or his poetic skills are comparable to Kalidas and others. It means at that time we have all India popularity of poets and authors. Remember, that was a time when there was no social media and we don't have organized publishing houses. So what was the medium of communication, and by what method people came to know each other when they lived in such remote locations? But still, acquiring all India fame today is very important. Kuch reels bana lo and you can acquire what? All India fame. But acquiring all India fame in the ancient and medieval context, don't you think is something very difficult? So name of Kalidas was known even to a South Indian people, and Ravi Kirti compares himself with Kalidas, Bhas and other poets. And this Aihole Prasasti, it is like Prayag Prasasti of Allahabad, praises Pulkesin II. But here we don't have usually that degree of exaggeration, something that we find in case of Prayag Prasasti. Though royal prasastis or eulogies are most of the time quite exaggerated, but degree of exaggeration may vary. So the degree that is noticed in Prayag Prasasti, that degree is not noticed in case of Aihole inscription, but there also we have the usual element of royal exaggeration of the achievements of Pulkesin II. Just remember Ravi Kirti, remember Aihole inscription, remember the language of this inscription, and also remember that in that inscription some North Indian poets have been mentioned, and in that inscription we have celebration of the achievements of Pulkesin II, the most famous ruler of Chalukyas of Chalukyan dynasty of Badami, who is also known for defeating Harsha on the bank of river Narmada. Rest of the things about them associated particularly with Vesara style of architecture. But then architecture has been separated from history to be done later on as part of Indian culture. So here in these classes we are focusing mainly upon the political dimension. We are talking about all these things, cultural things, context wise, not as topic wise. Topic wise later on as part of culture classes. Then further south during the same time we have the Pallava dynasty, and the general history of the Pallava dynasty, early history of the Pallava dynasty not well known to us. But one thing is clear, that Pallavas were representing what is known as Brahmanization. What is known as Brahmanization or Aryanization, or they followed simply what we can say Varnashram Dharma, Varna system, and on the basis of the ideology related to Vaishnavite traditions, they tried to establish their domination. There is a place in the south, Mahabalipuram or Mamallapuram. If you visit that place, you will find some of the earliest examples of temple architecture in the form of mandapas and rathas. Mandapas, cave temples; rathas, monolithic temples. That is part of architecture. Culturally, what is important is that these rathas have been named after the name of the Pandavas of Mahabharata. It means Pandavas of Mahabharata known, and we have some important themes there. We have Lord Krishna lifting Govardhan Parvat. We all know about this episode. We have Lord Vishnu resting on Shesnag. We have Mahishasur Mardini, that is Durga cave. All these are North Indian deities. We also have Bhim ki Rasoi. Do you know Bhim? One of the 5 brothers, 5 Pandavas, and Bhim known for his physical strength, power. So we have Bhim ki Rasoi. At which place? At Mahabalipuram. So all these things are symbolic and they reflect nothing but extension of North Indian influences towards the south. So Pallava dynasty is particularly known for reviving the process of Brahmanization of that region, which had possibly been disrupted for some time by the revolt of Kalbharas. Do you remember Kalbharas? Kalbharas, who had overthrown the established dynasties of the Sangam time. That is around the same time, that is 5th century, 4th century, 5th century AD. We have the rise of the Pallavas. They continued to rule till 7th, 8th century with their capital at Kanchipuram. We have 2 major rulers, Mahendra Varman and Narsingh Varman. Narsingh Varman was son and successor of Mahendra Varman. Now Mahendra Varman is known for assuming a title, and the title is Vichitra Chita. Vichitra is what? Vichitra. What is Vichitra? Unique, that is peculiar, kind of unique. Chit is what? Consciousness, that is peculiar bent of mind. So of course he was a ruler, but he is more known for his literary accomplishments. And whenever we have rulers, see, even Harsha was a author and he has written many books. I have mentioned those books as part of Harshvardhan, like Nagnanda, Ratnavali. These things are mentioned. These are minor works. I have not separated them from to be included in the cultural section. So he wrote a book, and name of that book is, can you tell me? Mahendra Varman. Mahendra Varman, the Pallava ruler who is known as, who assumed the title Vichitra Chita, was author of a book known as Mat Bilas Prahasan. What is Prahasan? Prahasan is satire. What is satire then? Satirical style you must be knowing. That is called Vyang in Hindi. Tanz. That is what? Being, is it being sarcastic? No. Taunt. Taunt, sarcasm, all these things can be used interchangeably, but in case of taunt and sarcasm, degree is somewhat on the higher side, and some element of malintention can be noticed, a greater element. But in Vyang, in satire, ironies are generally highlighted, that is, contradictions are highlighted. So this is a satire on Kapalikas. Who were Kapalikas? They were followers of Lord Shiva. Kalmukhas, Kapalikas, Aghoris. Have you ever heard of? Veer Shaivas, Lingayatas. No? In medieval bhakti, we can talk about them as part of religion, as part of a culture, Indian culture. So Mat Bilas Prahasan, a satire on Kapaliks, written by Mahendra Varman, a ruler belonging to the Pallava dynasty with his capital at Kanchipuram, known for his title like Vichitra Chita. He was follower of Jainism. So see, heterodox sects also reaching the south and affecting the ruling dynasties. And Mahendra Varman is also associated with some cave paintings there. So we have some places in the south. I have mentioned those places. Can you tell me? Which place? Ajanta, Ellora. You must be knowing about the paintings of Ajanta, Ellora, Bagh. There are many places. One place is there in South India which is associated with the Pallavas, and that place is Sittan Vasal. Sittanvasal. So Sittan Vasal Jaina paintings are at times, though controversies continue, associated with Mahendra Varman first. This Mahendra Varman first was a contemporary of both Harsha and Pulkesin second. And Pulkesin second had defeated not only Harsha but also Mahendra Varman first. But then there is a term that is called Badla. We just talked about Badla. Badla for this defeat was taken by his son and a successor whose name was Narsingh Varman. And Narsingh Varman defeated and killed Killed Pulkesin second and destroyed his capital. Capital was Batapi, and assumed a title. And title was Batapi Konda. Do you understand this term Konda? Something dangerous. Literal meaning of Konda is perhaps destroyer. So Batapi Konda means destroyer of Batapi. So who assumed this title, destroyer of Batapi? Narsingh Varman first, after defeating and killing Pulkesin second and destroying his capital, that was Batapi, and that was Badla. Badla for an earlier defeat of his father by Pulkesin second. Is this position clear? And this man, of course, is known for his military achievements. Later on also we have this Konda, Gangai Konda. Have you heard of this name? Chola ruler Rajendra first, assuming the title of Gangai Konda after defeating two rulers on the bank of river Ganga as a part of his North Indian expeditions. So Konda destroyer. So you destroy someone and you can also assume titles like this. Now let us write something. Now the time for dictation. In ancient part, that was leftover part, I have spared you from dictation. Now we are going to write something. Now you tell me, after Harsha, after Chalukyas, after Pallavas, after Guptas, rely upon the same chart, which topic is going to be important for us? We can begin from the North India. Early medieval dynasties. Let us talk about early medieval dynasties first. We just have few details about them, and then after talking about these dynasties, we can have a general topic, and that is Indian feudalism, which is more important than biographical details of the rulers and the dynasties. Because while talking about Indian feudalism, we are going to take note of broader tendencies related to economic life, political life, social life, cultural life, which appeared during the time which is known as the early medieval time, and which also became what we can say the cultural markers for the transition from ancient to medieval. So here in this series, I think the first important topic should be the Pratiharas. So just keep on writing some facts about Pratiharas. Make a heading, Pratiharas. Let us proceed point-wise, because here nothing for analysis. Most of the time factual details can be better presented in point form, but analytical answers can not be written in point form, or point forms lead to what we can say some sort of a compromise in the quality. So don't have a pre-mindset. I have to write in point form only, or I have to write in paragraph form only. Develop a dynamic personality, and in examination hall also remain dynamic. The kind of information you have, you can decide the better form of expression. So at times point forms may be better than paragraphs, at times paragraphs may be better than points. It all depends upon the nature of content you want to produce. But here the nature of content is what? Factual. So we are proceeding what we can say a point wise. So we have just few details about them right here. Also known as, first point about them, also known as Gurjar Pratiharas, also known as Gurjar Pratiharas. They are, continue writing in the same, we can merge points. They are also known as Gurjar Pratiharas. They are accepted as the earliest. They are accepted as the earliest of all the Rajput clans. All the Rajput clans. So in the early medieval time, we have many Rajput clans. Gurjar Pratiharas accepted as the oldest. Is this clear? Write the second point. Associated with, second point about the Pratiharas, associated with the famous theory of fire pit origin. Associated with the famous theory of fire pit origin, in bracket write Agni Kula or Agni Kunda also, but write Agni Kula, fire clan, Agni Kula. Okay, Agni, this is not what I have written. Yes, Agni. Agni is a fire. So we have 4 Rajput clans which are associated with this theory: Pratiharas, Parmars of Malwa, Chauhans, and you tell me, Solankis or Chalukyas. These 4 Rajput clans are known as fire clans, and we have a myth related to their origin, that they originated from a fire pit which had been constructed by sage Vasishtha at Mount Abu. He was performing some sacrifice, but the demons were disturbing him. So for the protection of this whole enterprise, he created 4 warriors, one after another, from the same fire pit. Pratiharas were the first among them. Is this position clear? So this is what? Somehow mythical origin given to the dynasty. Then write the next, third point. The founder of the dynasty, was, and see here we can have contrary informations, but details in different books, but don't pay them attention, because most of the time we have controversial things and we cannot settle those controversies. So we have to develop administrative traits. So whenever in history, if there is any point which is not very clear or ambiguous, or you have contradictory details, don't try to settle them, just bypass them. They are not important. UPSC generally does not ask questions which don't have definite answers. Is this position clear? So the founder was, right, Hari Chandra or Harishchandra. Harichandra we can write, Harishchandra also we can write. In our culture there has been a very famous ruler, Harishchandra, Satyavadi Harishchandra. Have you ever heard of Satyavadi Harishchandra? He was ruler of which of the following places? A. Ayodhya, B. Banaras, C. Mughal Sarai, now known as Deen Dayal Upadhyay Nagar, and D. Los Angeles. Elimination method, Los Angeles is eliminated, and then Banaras, yes, he was ruler of Banaras. Yes, very historical city, one of the oldest cities, not only in India, but in the whole world. So Harishchandra, but the real founder was, continue writing in the same, but the real founder was Nag Bhatt first. Nag Bhatt first. So if they ask you real founder, generally UPSC does not ask this kind of factual question, but then there are certain things which are called rituals. We also perform those rituals. Because in history, psychological satisfaction is also important. You people are our consumers, so consumer satisfaction. So if we leave these topics, you will say that those topics. No. So covering them creates less difficulty, leaving them creates more difficulty. So we prefer what? Less difficulty. That's why we are covering. Otherwise, this kind of questions generally not asked by UPSC unless we have some major departure from the established tendencies or trends. Is it clear? But we have to do some formalities. We cannot leave them, so we are doing it. So don't be emotional about all those things. You are starting finding, doing research. Who was Nag Bhatt second? Why he was the real founder and personal details? No, not important. Just know if there is any question related to real founder, go for Nag Bhatt first. Don't apply your mind too much here. We have other areas where we can use our minds, where we can have greater returns. Now write the next point. Among the famous rulers, we, that is we the people of India, can mention, C-A-N, difficult spelling I would be telling, okay? So we can, C-A-N, okay, that is written like this. We can mention Nag Bhatt first, second, Nag Bhatt second, Nag Bhatt first, Nag Bhatt second. And see the irony, when they lived, they did not know they are going to be known as Nag Bhatt first and Nag Bhatt second. All this categorization done by historians much later on, today. In the same dynasty, if you find two persons with the same name, so A first, A second. But when these people lived, they did not know what is going to be their number. So Louis XIV never knew that he is Louis XIV. Later on in history writing, people numbered Louis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, 14th. This is Louis or 14th. So people lived such great lives without knowing the names with which they are going to be remembered in history. So among the famous rulers, we have Nag Bhatt first, Nag Bhatt second. Mihir Bhoj, M-I-H-I-R-B-H-O-J-A, Mihir Bhoj. Bhoj name is very important in Indian history. Quite often we talk about Raja Bhoj. And then one more person is associated. Can you tell me his name? Gangu Teli, I don't know. Raja Bhoj, we have many rulers with this name. Bhoj 1, Bhoj 2, Bhoj 3. Likewise, in different dynasties also we have the ruler. But the Bhoj who is part of this saying, Raja Bhoj and Gangu Teli, was not the same ruler. That Bhoj is associated with Parmara dynasty. Parmaras ruled over Malwa. And Raja Bhoj, Dhar. You must be knowing about all these places. If you go to MP, Bhopal, the airport is named after Raja Bhoj, and then there is an area in our country that is known as Bhojpur, and there is a language that is known as Bhojpuri. Anyone familiar with Bhojpuri here? I'm not talking about Bhojpuri songs. I'm talking about Bhojpuri language, because even non-Bhojpuri people are familiar with Bhojpuri songs now. They have some peculiar characteristics. Okay. So, the same, in order to distinguish these two rulers, we call him Mihir Bhoj, and that Bhoj is known as Bhoj Parmar. Bhoj, so don't confuse Mihir Bhoja with the Bhoj Parmar, who is known as a scholar king of India. He was not a scholar king of India. He was a great warrior. He was a great conqueror. Clear? Then write the next point. Next point you write. The Pratiharas participated in the famous tripartite struggle. Famous tripartite, STRUGGLE. Tripartite struggle, which was mainly for the possession of, write something about tripartite also, mainly for the possession of Kannauj, the capital city of Harsha. Mainly for the possession of Kannauj, the capital city of Harsha, which had acquired political significance, in North India, comparable to Patliputra. In the time of the Mauryas. Comparable to Patliputra in the time of the Mauryas. So if we talk about major political centers in the North India, we have the first political center which became an imperial center, that was Patliputra, and after Patliputra it was turn of Kannauj to emerge as a city with symbol of royal dignity, authority, and hotly contested. Right, the major contest, continue writing in the same point. In the same point we are proceeding. Right, the major conflict or the major contest or major conflict. The major conflict was between the Pratiharas and the Palas. The major conflict was between the Pratiharas and the Palas, with occasional interferences made by the Rashtrakutas of the Deccan, who were less interested in the occupation of Kannauj, more and more interested in maintaining the balance of power, more interested in maintaining the balance of power. So how many parties? Three, and that's why the struggle is known as tripartite. Two North Indian powers and one Dakkani or South Indian power. And this was battle for the occupation of Kannauj in the light of its political historical significance due to its association with Harsha, the last great ruler of ancient India. Is this position clear? Now, who emerged victorious in this? So, right, in the same point you can carry or you can make another point also. Right, Pratiharas ultimately emerged victorious. In the tripartite struggle. Ultimately emerged victorious in the tripartite struggle. Occupied Kannauj and made the city their capital. Clear? Next point. The Pratiharas are particularly known for their resistance against the Arab invaders. Who had established their position in the Sindh region. We are going to talk about this. Who had established their position in the Sindh region in the first half of the 8th century. EIGHTH, आठवां जिसे कहते हैं, first half of the 8th century. Clear? So basing themselves in Sindh, they kept on making inroads and Pratiharas resisted them, and their historical role is particularly associated with resisting the Arab invasion. Right? Just two more points and after that the class would be over. So don't worry, just write the next point. Let us finish Pratiharas. Right? They possessed who? The Pratiharas. They possessed the best. CAVALRY. Is the spelling correct? Cavalry. They possessed the best cavalry as mentioned by the Arab authors. So we have Arab travelers, Arab authors. UPSC has asked questions about them also. They possessed the best cavalry according to Arab authors. Like Suleiman, SULEMAN, Suleiman, and Al-Masudi, ALMASUDI. Suleiman, right? Simple spelling, Suleiman and Al-Masudi. So these two Arab observers in the early medieval time has written some details related to the Indian political scenario, and they have talked about many Indian powers including the Pratiharas, and they praise Pratiharas for their cavalry, and according to them Pratiharas had the best cavalry. Then write next point. The famous Sanskrit author this is something that is related to cultural. The famous Sanskrit author Raj Shekhar. Raj Shekhar. Raj, right? Raj you can write easily. Then I think Shekhar also you can write. Yes, with equal ease, and read both together. It would be like Raj Shekhar. And he was a Sanskrit author, poet. The famous Sanskrit author, poet Raj Shekhar lived, Lived, lived in the Pratihara court में ही रहता था. Living in Pratihara court means enjoyed the patronage of the Pratihara rulers. ये मत सोचना कोर्ट में बोरा बिछा के वहीं सोता था. That is not the case. ठीक है, राजा चले गए, दरबारी चले गए, पोएट लेट गया वहीं. So he did not live in the court in that sense. He was given patronage by the Pratihara rulers. So this completes Pratiharas. In the next class, we are going to proceed towards the east to talk about the Palas, then towards the Dakhan to talk about the Rashtrakutas, further south to talk about the Cholas. And then after having a discussion on the Rajput and the theories of their origin, we can talk about Indian feudalism. नहीं हुई. हिस्टोरियन ही नहीं करते, हम कहां से करेंगे? कोई लिखेगा तब ना हम पढ़ेंगे. ठीक है. And then don't forget that all India competition, all India exam, unless until things are of all India significance, we can ignore them.